I'd like you to maybe, if you can, or wanted extemporaneous comment on the situation in Syria, and then vis-a-vis Tulsi Gabbard. She's been kind of smeared with the fact that she met with Assad. I personally think, this old concept, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. I don't think it's a big problem to learn what are the desires of people with whom you may not agree totally. And moreover, I'm not sure that in the breach that the Al Qaeda replacement for the Hezbollah-backed Assad is going to be much better. But at any rate, I don't know if you want to kind of comment on kind of the world situation, how that reflects on Tulsi's nomination.
Sure. So if you take a look at what's happened or transpired in Syria over the last, I guess, well, 20 years. And so if you look at the invasion of Iraq and other Middle Eastern conflicts that the U.S. was involved in, conflict with Israel, and then actually Jordan's involvement being a Western ally and being border with Syria. And I've spent some time in Jordan on near the Syrian border. I didn't really get there so much when I was in Iraq, but that aside, I understand the situation pretty well. And the United States kicked off a series of unfortunate cascading events when we toppled Saddam in Iraq. And there's no putting the genie back in that bottle to where we are today. And at the time, I actually thought it was a mistake to remove Saddam Hussein as a dictator in Iraq, even though I fought that war. And you could look at it as Assad as being somewhat Saddam-like figure. The
Well,
reality is
the
that
same Ba'ath party, actually.
yeah, and well, the issue here is that these people were typically um, were 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 not theist in terms of how they were ruling their domains, and they were pretty objective in trying to keep the peace between a bunch of warring tribes and people that hate each other. And that's the reality of many of these countries in the Middle East. They're areas that they're held together by force, and then once they're held together by force, then they have to keep the peace. And looking at what Tulsi's opinions have been about Assad and that part of the world is every time that and I agree with her. Every time the United States intervenes in Syria, Iraq, these other places, that it just gets worse. And so so after you topple one person, the intelligence services from the United States and our Five Eyes allies take a look at it and say, well, who's the next least worst option that we're going to back? And then we back one, and this sort of backs our arms trade business, the international arms trade business. So this is big business. A lot of it's on the black budget and of our nation, other nations, and it keeps that business rolling, which is a terrible business, at least for U.S. long-term national security interests, because every Syrian that gets killed, whether they're a radical Islamist or an Assad supporter, whoever they are, their children grow up to be enemies of the United States. And that's what we really have to think about every time that we're thinking about implementing a regime change. Every person that we kill, we create a whole family of enemies. And these people do not forget. It would be no different if your brother or sister got killed by a political faction or a party or someone in the United States. And at some point, you have to break the cycle. And the only way to break the cycle is just to not engage and allow people to earn their own freedom. And I learned this when I was in Iraq. I came to understand something very, very unique and precious to the United States. To have a true democracy, you cannot have that power given to you. A foreign military cannot come in and give you the power of democracy. You have to have earned it and fought for it yourself.
If you like this video, check out the full interview. Also, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you get notified every time a new video is uploaded. Thanks for watching.